SCP-173 is a Euclid-class SCP and the very first being captured by the SCP Foundation. It can move at a very high speed and can snap the neck of any life form. It is one of the most well-known SCPs of all time. It is also the main antagonist of SCP, Containment Breach. Biography Origin. This monster's origin is as of yet unknown. It is made of concrete and rebar with traces of Krylon brand spray paint. SCP-173 is extremely hostile and animate. It cannot move while viewed directly and must not be broken. Personnel at a minimum of 3 are assigned to enter the container and are to alert one another before blinking. It is reported to kill its victims by snapping the neck of any human it encounters. Personnel report sounds of scraping stone within the container when no one is inside. The reddish-brown substance on the floor is a combination of feces and blood. The origin of these materials is unknown but must be cleaned on a bi-weekly basis. SCP-173 in order from being prevented from escaping must be kept in a locked container at all times. When personnel enter SCP-173's container, 3 at the minimum may enter at any time and the door is to be relocked behind them. At all times, 2 persons must maintain direct eye contact with SCP-173, while the third person cleans the container until all personnel leaves and relocked the container. In video games, SCP, Containment Breach. SCP-173 is the first SCP object that the player encounters, and is the main antagonist of the game. After the guards bring the player along with 2 other Class D test subjects into SCP-173's containment, they shut the door behind them and instruct one of them to clean and the rest to make eye contact with SCP-173. Due to a massive power outage and site-wide containment breach, the door opens unexpectedly. The instructor orders them to remain in direct eye contact with SCP-173 until they can repair the door, before the rest of the facility has a blackout, thus breaking eye contact with the Class D and SCP-173, who quickly kills the 2 Class D until escaping its chamber, killing the security guard up on top of the balcony, and escaping into a large ventilation system. After the containment breach, SCP-173 appears in a room, next to his containment chamber. A guard and a scientist see it, and maintain eye contact, and slowly back out of the room. Also in another room, as soon as the lights in the room black out, SCP-173 drops down from a large vent and kills a scientist and a janitor who were attempting to escape. Throughout the game, SCP-173 will follow and attempt to snap the player's neck. Unless the player blinks or looks away from it, SCP-173 cannot move. If the player blinks or looks away, SCP-173 will either move significantly closer to them or open any doors that are blocking its way if it can. SCP-173 often appears in locker rooms, catwalks filled with decontamination gas which would cause the player to blink at a rapid pace, the small control room, sometimes in the metal corridors, and later on, the electrical room, along with SCP-106. Because SCP-173 uses the ventilation system to travel, most of its spawn locations will have a broken vent. If the MTF operatives encounter SCP-173, they will proceed to contain it again, completely ignoring the player if present. The operatives will then use a large cage to capture SCP-173 and return it to its containment chamber. SCP Secret Laboratory. SCP-173 serves as a playable character in the game. SCP-173 has the unique ability to move and instantly kill human players, by left-clicking on them, whenever no one looks at it. Other SCPs do not halt SCP-173 when viewing it. However, while being viewed, it cannot move. Human players viewing SCP-173 will start blinking at regular intervals, and depending on how many are viewing it at one time, it will move forward as people blink. SCP Containment Breach, Unity Remake. Just as the original game, SCP-173 is slightly much faster than blinking for a second. As of now, SCP-173 does not have a death screen once murdering the player. In online series, SCP Sedition breaks everything it touches. If my mother were around, that is to say if I had a mother, she'd say we were a lot alike. Well, despite the lack of a face. SCP-035. Speaking of SCP-173. In this non-canon, fan-made series, SCP-173 doesn't appear in the series, but is spoken of by many other SCPs in their respective interviews. There is something of a recurring theme between other SCPs being puzzled by SCP-173's existence, or even hating him. In music, SCP-173 appears in a song on the internet called the SCP-173 song created by Mobius. It is a song based around SCP-173 and was released on June 19, 2012, and has gained 633,763 views today. In board games, SCP-173 is included as a dangerous anomaly card that is capable of moving from player to player in the SCP board game Uncontained. Trivia: in addition to being the first SCP ever caught, SCP-173 was also the first one ever created. It was created on June 22, 2007 by 4chan user Moto42, also known as SS Walrus. Walrus created this as a random post to spook some people on a message board whilst trying to subvert the usual jump scare, creepy photo trend associated with bad creepypastas. People latched onto the idea as a new type of creepypasta due to the actual scientific style of writing, however, and it exploded from there. By January 2008, between the 17th and 19th, a new message board specially for SCPs was created, and more SCPs including SCP-882, SCP-106, and SCP-096. The initial post was made on the X Paranormal message boards, also known for spawning Ted the Caver in the Holders series, the latter of which having a slightly similar premise, and the post laid out the basic description of 173 used above. Its description and containment procedures have not really changed since that initial message post. By July 2008, the website specifically about SCPs was established and it exploded from there. As stated in the description, SCP-173 was the first SCP ever caught. The second was SCP-882, although most people thought it was 682. Despite being the first SCP ever caught by the Foundation, it is the 173rd. There has never been any explanation given in universe as to why this is. From a meta point of view, the reason is because SS Walrus intended it to be a one-off post on a message board and didn't expect it to go anywhere, so didn't really consider the numbering. SCP-173 is based on a real-life sculpture named Untitled 2004, created by the Japanese sculptor and artist Izumi Kato. The sculpture was made out of wood, acrylic, and charcoal. SCP-173 was the first SCP object ever found, single-handedly responsible for the creation of the SCP Foundation Wiki, which houses multiple other supernatural objects and beings. Despite being a Euclid class anomaly, SCP-173's presence has greatly unsettled SCP-682, one of the most dangerous and powerful entities in the multiverse, while the two were in the same chamber during an experiment. During this time, SCP-682 grew several more eyes to never break contact from SCP-173. When SCP-187, a girl who can see the future of objects and people she looks at and was used to seeing death and catastrophes, saw SCP-173, she screamed for a period of time before falling unconscious and slipping in state of catatonia for 48 hours before awakening, but couldn't remember what she saw. This implies that SCP-173 might be even more dangerous than thought before. There exists a revised entry of SCP-173, which is actually a tale. In it, the creature shows its capability to reproduce asexually through the substance it produced. After numerous reproductions, to the point where there becomes at very least 150 copies of SCP-173, the Foundation nukes North and South America, before bombing Wales to eliminate the last of the SCP-173s. In the tale, Date Night, Dr. Clef, a researcher of the Foundation with powerful reality warping powers, went on date with SCP-173 on Friday night. He put SCP-173 in front of a table inside a beautiful suite and dressed SCP-173 with a black dress and a blonde wig, while 5 tired D-Class kept their sight on SCP-173 as the date went on, with Clef admiring SCP-173's appearance. Ironically, in the classical revival continuity, Francis, Clef's real name, was terrified by 173 when they first discovered it. During an occasional cleanup of 173's cell, SCP-131 came inside its cell, and seeing that the statue posed a threat to the D-Class cleaning the cell, the iPod stared at the statue, leaving the 3 D-Class to clean the cell without any concern. This prompted the Foundation to formulate new procedures utilizing 131. In the tale, Anniversary. The invisible creator of SCP-173 and other anomalous statues enters the containment of SCP-173 to visit his creation, telling it that it is his favorite, killing those who don't give it attention. This could mean that SCP-173 is looking for attention and kills those who don't give it. In another tale, The Sculpture, a junior researcher asks Dr. Bright for permission in testing alternative ways of cleaning SCP-173's containment. They all fail due to SCP-173 continually changing the composite that it releases, and Dr. Bright denied to the junior researcher the permission of terminating SCP-173, stating that they can still learn from it. Dr. Bright then states to the O5 Council that for whatever reason, SCP-173 wants actual people to clean its containment unit, supporting the idea that SCP-173 wants only attention. It is implied that the creator of SCP-173 was a member of Are We Cool Yet?, an international community of artists who create anomalous paintings and sculptures, and often come into conflict with the SCP Foundation. This SCP entity is similar to SCP-650, since they are both able to move quickly when not observed. SCP-650 is not entirely hostile, however, as it only intends to startle people instead of actually killing them. In SCP-5555, it is revealed that the administrator of the Foundation, and other leaders of the other GWA are actually powerful immortal beings who use the SCP universe and its inhabitants as just a playboard game with role-playing for their own entertainment, and after one of them wins, the game starts over and the universe resets, but with major differences, such as SCP-173 being a D-class man in the previous game before becoming a bloodthirsty living statue in the current one. When the Foundation used SCP-978, a camera that when takes a picture of someone the photo it produces shows the individual's biggest desire, to take a photo of SCP-173, the picture did not change, possibly meaning that it is not alive, or it wishes nothing. In an attempt to kill SCP-682, it was proposed to put a photo of SCP-096 on SCP-173, which was immediately denied by the O5 Council due to the catastrophe that could cause such combination. In her author page, Phantom assigned SCP-173 the song, Rhinestone Eyes, by the Gorillaz. SCP-173. There was a legend about the Koitern. It was said that he would not kill you so long as you met his gaze. That some force of mutual defiance stayed the hand of death. Most disregarded the legend. Few tried it, and they found it to be true. Unfortunately, no one could meet his eyes forever. What no one knew was that the reverse of this effect was also true. The Koitern would not kill any who met his gaze, but none whose gaze he met could kill him. This is how the world ends, on SCP-173. Amongst a web of life, I am a dying prisoner in a shell of clay. I am a single object, doomed without purpose, without any source of respite. To subsist as I do now is to die a death more potent than that suffered by mortals. I can only dream of having the vitality they take for granted. No one takes responsibility for my actions save myself, and even I am unable to speak out against the world. SCP-173's Inner Monologue.